So if we're looking at our packets, we have two things to discuss today. Vessel taxation and reviewing the tariff, and then discussing PACAB's mission and goals.
Madam Chair, Mayor, I'd like to remove page 6 and 7 from the packet. Come back at a later time. I have a lot more research to do on it. It's about the passenger fees. So we can just remove those.
Okay.
That will be one, yeah. I got a lot more research to do on that.
So those are still in progress?
Some stuff is brought to light and I need to check on everything before we come back.
Okay. Everybody hear that? 6 and 7? The people in the audience? We're going to not be discussing today.
Chair Holmdel, would you like me to take roll call?
Oh, yeah, please.
Okay. Hughes.
Here.
Jaffa.
Here.
Lawrence.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Wolkers. Paquette.
Here.
Holmdel.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thanks. We'll get that stuff figured out when we do this. So we're going to go into the vessel taxation and reviewing the tariffs. I have had a request from a member of the public to speak at the very beginning on a couple of the things we're going to talk about. So do you want to go ahead and do that now?
Yes, thank you so much. Is it on? No.
Oh.
No, it is. Okay.
Carol Griswold, Inside City Limits. Dear PACAB Commissioners, I agree with Chair Brandy's letter regarding the overwhelming scope of PACAB. While all the issues the Commission has covered are extremely interesting and important, PACAB meetings now resemble mini council meetings. Unfortunately, core port issues have not received adequate attention. I'm especially concerned about two recent issues. The washdown pad location on the north shore of the harbor is too close to adjacent businesses, pedestrian walkways, and the water. A vessel washdown pad is not like a car wash. Pressure washing releases hazardous toxic chemicals into the air, ground, and water. How did this project get to the 65% completion stage in this totally inappropriate location? The filtration system is inadequate, releasing toxic chemicals directly into the harbor. There was no discussion at the February 16th PACAB meeting when the harbor master was absent, nor at the May 2nd meeting when he was present due to lack of time and follow-up. The other urgent issue is the purchase of new creosote-treated floats for the Northeast Harbor project. The harbor master presented this information at the May 2nd meeting without PACAB comment or follow-up. The goal for our clean harbor should be to remove toxic creosote-treated wood, not to introduce new creosote-treated wood into essential fish habitat. I sent extensive comments through the city clerk to PACAB regarding these two issues. I hope that you received them. I urge PACAB to address these two issues as a top priority. Do not allow the washdown pad to proceed in the current location. Do not allow creosote-treated wood to be used for the project. The health and safety of the public, our harbor, and the environment is more important than convenience for boat owners or initial cost savings for the city. And thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. We did receive those, and those things will be part of our discussion.
Great.
Appreciate you taking the time. Okay, so we'll move into vessel taxation and reviewing the tariff. Would you like to?
So this was on your goals calendar, and so nothing new about the taxation. I know we talked about it many times. You know, it's attached to the mill rate. If we change it, it has to go before and council will get changed. It also has to get the borough to go on board. There'll be a loss. The paper on page 3 that shows what will be lost in revenue. And that's why I put in the current wait lists of what we have. So it's not a lack of votes that way. It's just it's a higher tax, but you can always ask for them to look at it again, and always been reduced. I mean, I know that's not the answer, but find out about changing it. it's gonna have, the borough's gonna have to be involved in other things, but we could go to a flat rate, but I think Kenai, they have the same rate as us. So, let's put in the same materials we had before on that taxation, so.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments?
Yeah, I just, one issue, but the ability to understand would be a definition of the boat classes, what each one is, what type of vessel does it represent?
Yeah, I looked at it, this came from the borough. I looked at it and I couldn't tell what they had for the boat classes.
Any other questions, comments,
In terms of what?
in terms of what we've been presented with?
What's the ask here?
Are we just reviewing what is currently proposed? Is there a?
Right, if we want to move forward, we have to see what we need to do to change the mill rate and, for the vessels, and can the city afford the loss of almost $300,000, and, and then, like I said, the borough is going to have to do some work at it too.
So you're proposing,
I wasn't proposing anything, this is what you asked to bring back before you, and I brought it back before you.
okay, I didn't think I was.
Madam Chair, this has been an item that was brought forward about 4 years ago, was it?
But every few years, yeah.
We were trying to see if there was a better way to tax the vessels more friendly, yet, still achieve
Okay.
the city of Seward.
Thank you for bringing me up to speed on the history of this issue.
So there's one thing on here that I just want to make sure we think about if we do decide we're going to increase the boat launch fee, because I've heard from a lot of local seniors that they believe, because they're seniors and they've been here all their lives, that they shouldn't have to pay a launch fee. So I wonder if there's a way to segregate it so that, non-residents pay one kind of launch fee and Seward residents pay a different launch fee.
I don't know how you would, it's done by, you can buy a pass for the whole season.
Right,
You can do the daily rate and it goes to a kiosk.
right,
Nothing comes in, I don't know, anybody can push senior on,
right. What if, to get a Seward citizen launch tag, they had to come into the harbor master?
correct. It's
If we did it-
It's $100 for, right now it's currently $100 for.
Right,
yeah.
right, but if we were to change it for everyone other than Seward citizens, then Seward citizens would come into the boat, into the harbor master to get their reduced fee launched ticket?
You talking about a daily fee or the seasonal pass?
I would think the seasonal pass, I don't think if they're doing daily. that
If they
would make
launch their boat
sense.
10 times, it's $10, it's $100 for the whole year.
Right.
So it's best to just get the, yeah.
Right,
Yeah, I don't know how that would work. I mean, we could look at it, but I just,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the software, we could look at our software, we can add a thing in there for seniors.
well, it isn't so much seniors as it is senior Seward residents as opposed to other seniors.
I have to check with the state also, because the state currently owns the launch ramp that was just replaced.
Right.
And the current one we're going in. So we have to abide by certain rules. I have to ask that question.
Okay.
Chair. I'd like to, it's not a motion, I'm just presenting it as an item for consideration. I don't want to see us jump automatically to a Homer rate. I think maybe $12 for a launch with...
Madam Chair, we're jumping to the tariff.
Bounce it back and forth.
Yeah, we're on the vessel taxation. If we're done with it, then we're jumping, don't want to jump back and forth. It might be easier, just,
Does anybody else have anything to add to Sheriff Katz?
I'll look and find out more about the vessel class.
Madam Chair. I think from my understanding of this whole issue was we wanted to both cover our costs, the harbor costs, and also be competitive in the market. And the review that I see, and from what I remember of comparative costs to other communities up and down the coast, Seward remains competitive and maybe on the low side. And if that's still enough to cover the costs, with an increase, it's obviously costs increase slightly. I think it's perfectly appropriate. I don't see any problem with what's presented here.
So, Norm, with the Excel sheet or whatever it is that you have here,
That came from the borough, but yeah.
from the borough, can you explain it a little bit more? So the mill rate is what vessels in Seward are currently paying?
Correct.
And then they have the flat tax rate in addition to?
No, the flat tax rate is what it would be if you did a flat tax. Like Homer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Because Kenai's pretty small, that's why they went to use the Homer flat tax for.
And would you say, per Bruce's comment, that we are competitive on the borough, or?
For the tax? No, we're not competitive, we're way high.
We're higher than?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's available to have public comments, but I'll
It is, yes.
just clarify, I'm not speaking as mayor, and I'm definitely not speaking from the railroad. I'm gonna speak with like the other side of the story, which I'm not even saying I'm gonna advocate for, but I just wanna give the other side of it. So Cook Inlet Tug and Barge has sent the city, or, has put out a number of requests, because they would like to see that vessel tax lowered to be a flat tax, so that they can bring, they would see it as a benefit to their bottom line to bring more vessels here. So as the harbor master's already stated, maybe we don't need to look at that if, our market is already at the top of what it can bear. But I will say, when we look at the city collecting a tax, that's one thing. The picture you don't see is if other barges and other companies brought their vessels here, is the public, or the private sector benefit of more crews working, more marine work, full-time marine jobs, which is not reflected in any tax that the city might collect. But, then there would be sales taxes as they're going to the restaurants and hotels and grocery stores. So, again, I'm not advocating, I'm just telling you maybe the other side of the story as you're trying to, figure out why this is even an item for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Please.
Yeah, Norm, so two things. You're saying basically we have to go to the borough to get a tax?
We have to work with the borough, and then we have to bring it before council to see if they want to go to a flat tax. This is going to affect the general fund.
Okay, so as a citizen, I'm not
I see.
advocating anything, I'm asking a question.
Sure.
Outside the city limits, I pay a flat rate for my boats. Is that part of this 3.84?
No, that's in town only.
Only in town, okay.
Yeah. You pay.
So the borough would charge an additional flat rate on the boats?
Yeah, so what the borough charges you, actually, that flat tax rate is the borough's rate, that's what they charges you.
Okay.
Sorry, it wasn't Homer. I had Homers here, but.
All right, and my other thought was, the Mayor Terry said something about, what the side event would be if we could bring more. Also, the potential for bringing more vessels if our tax rate is a little more competitive to Seward too, to maybe offset any decrease in tax on the vessels that already are here. It's just a thought, so.
So for the larger vessels, just to let you know right now, we're full.
Okay.
But with this new project, we're gaining another 700 feet of lineal moorage, which is nice. We'll be adding to, we can bring in more. And we can look at it, it's just, I don't know where to start, but I'm pretty sure we'll figure it out to go, if we want to go to a flat tax. Which of course, we can bring it at another meeting to direct, to ask us to look for it. Just no action items can be done at the meeting.
So a flat tax, sorry.
Yeah, I think I understand this a little bit better, and I appreciate Board Member Lawrence's pointing out that I did not fully use this table. I'm concerned that the harbor master and department have looked at this rate based on the cost of doing business. And if you reduce that, even if you increase city revenues through sales tax, is there a mechanism that the city would then replenish or add to the budget?
So these tax goes to general fund, any sales tax goes to the general fund, so I don't know how you can, it'd be an increase, I'm pretty sure, but I don't know, there's no way to tell what it would be,
So it'd be a difficult topic.
to find out where the money is actually coming from.
Yeah. And just, I should know this, but how is the harbor operating as far as revenue versus costs?
We're doing okay. We're
ahead?
borderline, we're
Way ahead?
borderline, we're doing fine, but we just need to upgrade some of the prices of those other things that have been, since 2006, we're way lower than everybody else. And we need to bring it up because of, prices are going up, the insurance has gone up a lot, of course, we all know fuel's gone up, and then, the labor prices have gone up.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, if we're talking about a flat tax, then it wouldn't, the class of the boat wouldn't matter?
It does.
It would still matter? Okay.
I mean, I would think that you could, it'd be hard to tell where some of the money's coming from, right? That goes into the general fund, but if all of a sudden hotels are busier than they have been in the past because there's more work being done in the winter, I think you could kind of quantify that a little bit, maybe not at the grocery stores and the restaurants and things, but also if the harbor's maxed out, then there's no other vessels or barges or whatever to come until we get this other project finished, and then there'll be.
We're double up on barges now on X float, doubled up on tugboats on Z float. Our float's full. Like I said, the other ones will be mostly the fishermen are coming now. The fleets are coming in because of, fishing opened up. We actually had 2 boats parked there the other day and they're still piling, so.
And what about the area over at SMIC?
SMIC is double wide on the fisherman's float. We have to, JAG is doing some work on the North Dock with a buoy tender. They just launched the Navy ship. We have some barge coming in to load all those man camps. They're gonna go to some village somewhere to do some work, so.
Question. Will this come back to us in the form of a motion or a resolution?
When it comes back in a meeting, you can put it in as a meeting, as an agenda item, and then we can talk about it, and you give us direction if we want to go that way, and we can go that way.
And one more question. I remember this discussion going back to when the drilling rig was here in town. And one of the reasons, it came up to us regularly that they were better off pulling up and going someplace else because of this expense. That's the same argument we're talking about now, right? And when citizen Christopher Terry brought that up, we're talking about bringing other boats into Seward by reducing the cost that would make it more attractive. That's what we're talking about, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Because they also get priced at the railroad dock also. I mean, same tax.
So what is the next step in the process?
So, so at the next meeting, if you decide you want to look at a flat tax, we just got to figure out, I don't even know where to start with, but we'll figure it out how to implement the flat tax and get away from the mill rate. I have no clue, but we'll have to try to figure it out. I can ask the borough, said they work with, we have to work with the borough because they have to change all their software stuff.
Yeah. We have a member comment?
Yeah, Tom Tungus, inside the city limits, I guess. As Norm says, this has come up many times over the years, and to me, to lower our cost would be kind of like me, if I've got a full hotel, lowering my price. The hotel's already full, and for me to lower my price just means we get less, and I think that this, even though our company probably is the highest payer on property tax, you know, I personally think it's fair, and so I think, you know, it would be imprudent if we already have a full harbor to say we're going to lower our prices to bring more boats to a harbor that we already have a huge wait list on. So I guess I kind of feel like it's fair, even though we're the ones that pay the biggest bill on this. But so I'm not in favor of lowering it, and I think it'd be very confusing.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
Amount just that, or can I turn to this page? So, something that catches my eye is this labor rate. And it just seems sort of...
Talk about Exhibit A?
Page 4, whatever that is. The charges for services page?
Yes, yep.
I mean, it seems like what we're charging people to be on the wait list is competitive with the other towns you've got listed here, but it seems like our labor is a place where we could actually, I mean, if we came up to $75 instead of the $52.50, we'd be right in line with Cordova and still a little less than Homer. And it doesn't seem like an unreasonable jump to me.
So Madam Chair, if you look, I had a lay down, because for some reason it didn't get up. There's tariff proposed changes Exhibit A. That might help you out there, so.
Okay, so you're proposing we go up on the wait list, we'd be the most expensive person or city. Labor overtime, okay.
Clarification.
Sure.
You specify what labor is for like a tow and for a pump. Is that what you charge people for a tow, or is it what?
That's what we charge people for a tow.
Okay.
If you want to go down that list on Exhibit A, I think it might make things a lot easier.
Yeah.
We'd appreciate that.
So if we want to start with the freight,
Okay, start with the freight. First 5 days is $126 right now, and then it says first 5 days $1.60 or $3.
that's what we recommend.
Which
So
is-
somewhere's in between.
Oh, okay.
Find a number that,
So it shouldn't be or, it should just be a hyphen. Yeah, this is great. This is very helpful, and it kind of brings it all together now.
yeah, I don't know why I didn't get sent with the original document set up. That's my fault.
So just, go ahead.
Go down to labor, which I understand a little bit more than the others. I would say that for the item that Board Member just mentioned, my first question is, if you're going to establish a rate, what's it based on? I don't completely understand, you know, is it just what can we get, or Is there an actual,
Nothing has been raised since 2007.
well, I'm not disputing it should be raised, but you just picking a number out of the air isn't,
So we went by the inflation, you see on that far right, the inflation rate, what it was, and then what we were recommending. And then we can bring it back again later on, it can wait another 10 years. I mean, we can bring it up to what the inflation rate is and then put it with the CPI, but then it changes every year.
okay. So these rates are, I'm sorry, it's fault. When we work our rates, I'm sure most companies do, we have our burden costs, which includes what you're paying a guy and whatever requirements you have to put into besides that. We then include some overhead and other costs, maybe profit. Is there anything reflected like that here, or is this just straight costs?
It's the cost of the person and then the insurance, the workers' comp, all that stuff.
So that's a burden cost. So when I see these numbers, for instance, a loader, which let's say a 966 or something, is that what we're talking about?
Well, yeah, or a Volvo loader, I mean, we don't have
Okay,
any
so,
more than 966. but-
Now you're 68.25 for the equipment plus the operator. Then you're gonna go to 175, or suggesting 175, so
That includes the operator.
that's roughly $110 an hour.
It includes the operator. The
I
other one, you
understand.
have to add the operator cost.
Well, that includes the so there'd be some increase in the equipment cost, and the operator cost then at $110 an hour seems a little bit high for public employees without profit.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my question sort of dovetail into that. Can you say, if somebody paid $68.25 plus operator, what did they pay?
Well, it's 68.25 plus 52.50.
Okay.
The 6250 is,
120.75.
52.50.
That's the labor cost, right?
oh,
I got it.
okay.
May I ask a question?
120.75.
So, Harbor Master Regis, could you give a use case for this, like loader, grader, oil tanker? Is this SMIC or general?
General.
So if somebody needed a loader to show up, they could contact you and that would happen, or?
They would hire us to do that, but it'd have to be part of the boatyard. We're not gonna go down to somebody's house.
Yeah, but
No,
in that
we're
area,
getting
so
with-
whatever they need done, that seems pretty generous.
So, the oil tanker is the biggest one, that's our biggest use. We haven't had anybody, request a loader, a grader.
Okay.
In the pickup trucks, we'd have nobody, but it's been in the Tariff, and it's there for reasons, like I know the shop has the same thing with their fees. If they have to go do something, at a house or whatever, that's what they would charge.
Okay. Yeah. That helps. So these aren't common occurrences?
No, it's like if we had to go, like take a loader, something was in the way of us getting a boat, we had to get a loader to move it, that's what they would.
All right, thanks. Yeah, that helps some. Thank you.
So one more, if I might. Using that oil tanker example, because you say that's the one that's most common. It's at 47.25 now. You would increase that, what you call an inflation rate at 26.85% to 59.94 for the equipment.
Correct.
And I'm sure that there are plenty of blue books that would support that. So that's probably easy to quantify. And then that means that your labor is about $90 an hour. Yeah, not exactly. And that seems a little more realistic. Is that the way I'm reading that now? Your recommended $150 includes the operator's at about $60 an hour. So that's about $90 an hour for the labor.
It's actually,
Oil tanker labor. Or operator.
so if you combine both, it'd be $99.75 for an hour. That's what they would be paying right now. But we want to increase it another $50. because the other one was, the way it was written, it was plus the operator. So you get the operator hour labor, and then now we're just trying to combine it to make billing easier, but including the operator.
So if you're including the operator, what are you gonna do with overtime?
If it's overtime, and then I see what you're saying. The overtime would be just for the operator, and then it'll be whatever the labor rate is. And it's like the travel lift. When we do a travel lift, the lift stays the same, but he's paid more for the employees, or you're paying the employees overtime.
Okay, so just, I was looking at the loader, not any of the other ones. So just on a loader, the way it was now, we were charging $68.25 plus the operator, which was at $52.50 an hour.
Correct.
If we use your inflated rate of $86.58, and we add the new rate of $75 an hour, we get to $161.58. And your recommended number is $175. I don't have a problem with that. But my question becomes, what happens as employee rates go up? So we're going to lock this in.
Correct.
But then personnel typically, you know, they get raises and, you know, over time, their number goes up. So is this difference between the 161 and the 175, the wiggle room on that, or how does that get dealt with?
If it goes up past that, we can come back, or we can attach it to the CPI like we did with the wharfage. We tack that to a biannual rate.
Okay.
Yeah, they're going, because so our labor rate has gone up since we did that wage study, so it went up a lot.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why we're coming back with this.
Right.
So,
I want to make sure we don't get caught in the crosshairs going down the road, that a year or two from now, all of a sudden, you know, our labor rates have gone up so much that we're kittywampus on these again.
Well, I think you could either make it the inflation rate and then do a CPI, or say, let's revisit, like, let's go with these numbers and then let's revisit this in 5 years, or instead of 14 years.
yeah,
We can, you know,
absolutely, we can just come back and revisit it in 5 and see where we're at with the wages and,
because I would think also to Linda's point, you do have people that are gonna get raises, but you also have people that are gonna retire, and you're gonna bring in new people that are gonna be at lower rates that'll, you know, offset those numbers, I would think, so.
And is 5 years the right window, or should it be 3?
who knows, I don't know. We could bring it back every 2 years, you can bring it back 5. I mean, we went,
I think, in my opinion, considering the state of, I'm involved in hiring a bunch of people, and I would say that 5 years is too long. Things are changing too much, too fast, to wait 5 years.
I think I understand the way you put this together a little bit better. I see these all the time and present them, and it's often a matter of how you present them, Excel or whatever. You can play with these things so much, so thank you for explaining that. I guess I'd like to get a general feel for what the average user, and I know there's a whole lot of different kinds of boat users out there, but what is the average user going to see in an increase? $100 a usage, $200 a usage? For each, any of these activities. If he calls out an oil tanker for a purpose to do whatever he's going to do, it's going to cost him an extra $200. He said last year it was $400 and this year it's $600. Is that what he's going to see?
so like just like a loader or a grader, so if we say this individual has a fuel spill, we gotta clean it up. So he'll hire somebody to clean it up, or we will help out clean up, we can't find who did it. Or if we find out who did it, we'll bring in our equipment and use that equipment to clean it up. So that's what this is for, not for somebody to use, like offload trucks and stuff. That's not what it's for. I'm thinking that's where Mayor Smith was going at. So that's not what it's for. It's for working in the harbor, but if a boat does something or, and we have to use our equipment to fix it, that's what it's for. It's like the water department digging new water line into a house, same thing.
So, based on their lease, they're required to do certain things, and if there's a mishap or a need, they call you, here's the rates. Okay.
It's in the tariff, so I mean, that's one thing.
Okay.
I think what I'd be comfortable with is tie it to the inflation rate that you provided for us, using the CPI biannually with a review period of, say, 4 years, within 4 years, every 4 years. But tied to the CPI like you were talking about.
If it doesn't keep up with this, if the CPI doesn't keep up with the rate, then we can bring it back.
Yeah.
But if you attach it to the CPI like we did the other thing, then, you know, if we can keep up with it, great. I wouldn't, for these labor rates and stuff like that, and using this stuff, I would say yes, but for the lifts, I would say we just go with a certain rate. That's my opinion on the lifts. I think if we just stay with the other town. What's that?
Tie labor to inflation and leave your equipment rate the same? Is that what
No,
you're saying?
we'll tie the equipment rate, all the equipment rate except for the travel lifts. Put that at the inflation rate, and then you can do a biannual rate every 2 years. Increase it by the CPI.
I'd like to see this come back every 3 years for the over review, you know?
I just had a curiosity question. This used oil filter and sorbent thing, how do you charge for that? I mean, like next to my office, there's a disposal site, and surely people don't go dump 5 gallons and then come give you 50 cents.
No, so we don't charge for them tanks, because if we did, people would be dumping everywhere. This is if we have to go to a vessel, or a vessel comes in, like we've had tugboats come in and they have 55-gallon drums on their boat, on the deck, and we need these pumped off.
Okay.
That's what that's for. Or if we go into the boatyard and the guy wants to empty his fuel tank, because he's gonna replace it, we would pump it out, you know. So they know how much fuel they have, and we have, you know.
So this is mostly all SMIC kind of stuff, not so...
We do come to the T-dock and pump off boats, but mostly now Shoreside does it because they have people that use used oil, so. And the filters and absorbers, if there's a spill, we buy them by the bags and we bring a bag out. If we use a whole bag, they get charged for the bag.
Yeah, it looks to me like, whether it's a 2-year, 3-year, however, you haven't changed the rates in 15 years, yeah, it's due.
Any other discussion?
It's like that, I like that, I can't remember who raised that comment about the lifts, but having the lifts at a more prescribed or stable rate, I feel like that's one of the invitations to come do business here, and people need to plan sometimes a year or two in advance for that sort of thing, so having that be a simple number that's in the tariff and the other stuff tied to the CPI makes a lot of sense to me.
Anybody else wish to go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're all on top of it. I think a simple way to explain it is, this is the fees that are charged for services that the city might assist the private sector with. And the travel lift is something that the whole harbor uses. And I think separating the two.
All different user groups use it.
Yep.
Yeah. I have a curiosity, or maybe just a note. Between the time you printed this and now, the day cruise is now roughly 108, right? You've got 99.
It fluctuates because of fuel prices, I mean.
Right,
yeah.
right, but so, I mean, right today, it's up to 108.
Right.
So it's...
It was mostly the fishing charters that jumped way up there. The day cruises pretty much, roughly, they're pretty much they're bringing in the folks to town.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. But you know, the prices on the smaller vendors is much higher than what it used to be. So that's a good indicator too of, where the market is.
Right. Like I said, I just threw that in there about the market for the charters and the day cruises, just to see how the fishing charters rates went way up. Carl's laughing at me. Went way up, and how the day cruises, they went up a little bit.
So do we need to come back to up at the top where you've got all freight NOS and pick some numbers? Do you want us to pick numbers here, first 5 days, 250?
I pull up the other folks' rates, and that's where there was lowest 160 and highest $3. Some are higher, and then I'm not gonna say who, but I figured those are fair numbers. But we can stay with the lower rate and then see how we go from there. We're now starting to see freight at SMIC. We see that, we're seeing more freight, so which is nice.
And are you concerned if we were to raise it, that you'd see less freight?
I don't think so. We got people coming, and then, I know that the railroad dock has been really busy also, so something that we can't handle, they go to the railroad dock. When railroad dock was busy, they came over to SMIC. So it's a combination of working with both parties.
So would a good number to be, say, start with $2 on the first one and maybe, $3.20 on the other one as a place to start and see how it goes?
How does that relate to the 26%? I mean, I think starting with the 26% interest increases.
So this is just a lay down rate. This is just a lay down rate,
Are you suggesting we put something with something behind it if we're gonna update those? And I think starting with what the current inflation rate is a good place to start. Okay, anything else on tariffs? So just for clarification, Norm, this will be coming before us again?
So I'm gonna come back with you with with the rates that we discussed, and then you will vote, or you can make any amendments at that time. Like what requests were asked about the NOS, and then the inflation rate for all the equipment stuff. And then the power equipment, the same thing. And then we just need to discuss the 50-ton and 330-ton rates. And I can bring it all back at one time. And you can amend it or go with it. But I'm just going to go off what you're what the discussion is right now.
I don't think anybody...
Oh, and it makes none of this will happen until 2023, January. Because we're going to be working with the budget, that's why we kind of get it now, so we can...
Did anybody have any concerns? Do they see anything with the
No,
increase for the
I think they all look great. I really do.
travelers?
To your point, though, I don't see how we can apply the inflation rate to these numbers here. Because unless I'm doing something wrong with this calculator. If you take 126 and multiply it times the inflation rate,
It's 40 cents,
I was gonna say
40 cents
37, something
increase.
like that.
oh, it's only 33 cents. That was, the decimal point wasn't in the right spot. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, so it would be toward the lower end of the recommendation.
So on page 4, you can see what I did with the travel lift rate from Cordova. Homer doesn't have one, they have a private yard. And Valdez does, but I don't like to use Valdez numbers because they're subsidized.
Right.
But they're actually, they're raising their rates up above ours because they're losing their subsidy, So they're raising all their rates when I talked to the harbor master from Valdez, so.
Could we get just a summary of what advice we've given the harbor master to move forward? I heard the 2-year with the 4-year and the 3-year and tied inflation and...
So what I wrote down, and you correct me if I'm wrong, so for the NO, for the freight, $2 for the first 5 days, $3.20 for the second, and then on all the equipment and the labor and everything, you go with the inflation rate, and then we're gonna put that at a biannual rate, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and then that takes care of everything on down there, and then the travel list, we're gonna go with what was recommended.
Correct.
That's what I got.
And how often was the renewal or review?
Every 2 years.
Oh,
I think that's everything that was brought up.
You feel good about it, Norm?
I do, I just, it's been that way for a long time, and I had one of my office staff was saying how, how things were getting more and more expensive to do, and, I mean, everybody knows it, so I'm just trying to get it up to a fair rate for everybody, just to kind of stay with the other harbors. Homer's raising their rates too, so. I hate to use Kenai because it's so small of a harbor, but they're the same, for the taxation, they're the same as us. But I will look into more of the flat rate thing and what's going to entail, and then I'll bring it back and I'll have it written up and bring it, but have it sent to you.
Thanks, Tom.
I imagine there would be maybe a little bit of sticker shock with some of these things, just because it's jumping 27% or whatever it is, but having not done it for 14 or 15 years,
Right.
I mean, it's...
So remember, we raised the storage rates at SMIC. We heard it from a couple vessels, just a couple vessels. And then nothing for the other folks, no problem.
And you're full.
Yeah, and it was the same couple people we have every year.
And did they leave, or did
No,
they
they came
still
out.
paid it? They just didn't like paying it?
Correct.
Okay.
But I know who they were.
And the thing was, they said, well, insurance is going up and all this other stuff. I go, well, insurance went up for us also. I mean,
Right.
still.
Right.
I mean, we're not out there to, we're gonna keep bringing people to Seward, have them work on their vessels and, buying locally and all that other stuff. So
Right.
just trying to keep it fair, but reasonable.
I did just recently, we had a fishing vessel tie up to our dock waiting to get lifted out, and they came over here because we were cheaper than Homer.
Good.
Yeah, they raised their rates, so.
Okay, we'll move on then. So the second thing on the agenda is one I brought forward, which is just ahead of our meeting with city council at our next joint meeting. I wanted to talk about PACAB's mission and goals, mostly the mission. I mean, I think we've gone over our goals. I think our mission ties into our goals. Page 9 is what I wrote regarding this. So I did a bunch of research into how PACAB came to be. I think some of you guys were probably here when that happened. It was a sort of a combination of a port committee and a commerce committee that found that their duties were overlapping, and they were put into one committee. And so when I decided to join PACAB, I went off the mission of the board that was listed on the website. And at the time, the website just said port matters. It said coal, fish, and products coming in and out over the docks. However, that's not the most current version of what the powers and duties of PACAB are, and I asked the city clerk to put them in, and they're on page 11, part of the code 2.30.325, powers and duties. And when you look at what this part of the ordinance tasks us with as a body, it is a very huge undertaking, especially when you look at the other two committees that the city has in place to help support city council have a pretty well-defined scope for what it is they cover. we're meeting twice a month. Our meetings are 2 hours each time we meet. And so far, the things that we're covering are really beneficial, but it is a huge, very wide scope. I personally feel very hard put to completely educate myself on the variety of topics that we're being asked to weigh in on them and give input to. I know port and commerce, I know what happens in the water, I know what happens in boats. That is something that I know about and want to be on a committee that deals with those things. I don't personally know anything about sustainable energy. I know some stuff about housing. So I think we should look at whether or not the scope of what we're tasked with as a committee is too big. So there's a couple of things that I want to look at. One, are we tasked with too much? And if the city council feels like they need that kind of advice, maybe it's time to add another board. Maybe it's time to add a board that deals with sustainability across energy and recycling and renewable resources. Or maybe it is time to have a board that looks at housing or something like that. But it seems like everything that isn't planning and zoning or history gets put onto our committee, which I feel like is a lot of work. If the council decides they want this to be our mission, I think we should consider changing the name from Port and Commerce to something that more effectively reflects what this committee is tasked with. However, I will go back to my original assertion that the task presented before us, what is under our powers and duties is so broad. We are basically a mini city council. We are looking at everything that affects, it says, advise city council on matters involving the establishment of support services towards the objectives outlined in these subsections, which is basically anything that has to do with the design and coordination of projects to promote and develop transportation, trade, energy, and commerce. That's all the activities that happen in the city. So there's really nothing that doesn't fall under our purview, and I believe that's a very big scope for us.
I'm okay with it.
Madam Chair, I applaud you on your bravery. Because a lot of one question I have of you, do you have a historical reference for when item 4 was defined that way?
Item 4, this was changed in 2009.
2009, okay.
Yeah.
So it was most recently.
Yeah, that was the most recent revision, was
Okay.
2009.
Yeah, I've always had a little bit of issue with, but I went along with, the fact that we are required to explore arenas that aren't really associated with port and commerce, all right? And some of it came about because the citizens of the community didn't feel that they had any other arena they could present that to.
Sure.
So they brought it to our attention, and because a lot of the board members here are due diligent with support of the community of Seward, any individual item that they thought was really important, they would get behind, okay? And I'm just saying that's the political nature of it, but I think we are a little too broad, if you want my opinion, but that's my opinion.
That's what we're doing.
Madam Chair, I would, the city manager and I have had numerous conversations about this topic, and the work that PACAB is intended to focus on as it is lined out in code is very, very, very broad. I would remind everybody, encourage everybody that city code is a living and breathing document that can be updated as we need it to be updated. I was just looking back on Monday at you guys' priorities, short-term and long-term goals, and I guess I would encourage PACAB, when you put something like a bullet point for promoting the quality of life for Seward residents, that is so broad that, you can find yourselves unintentionally being tangled up in all types of conversations that are outside of your expertise, as you pointed out, Madam Chair, and your purview. We have so much going on at SMIC, we have so much going on in the harbor, the railroad's working on 2 really exciting projects. There's so much commerce that's taking place in the harbor, And so city administration's perspective is that that's where your time is best used, is working on commerce as it applies to marine activities. And when you try and get involved in everything that applies to commerce, that's everything. It's everything that we do. And so I would just encourage you guys that code can be changed. I'm looking forward to the dialogue that you guys will be having with City Council on the 29th to really hear from council what is this body, what work product is this body going to produce that assists City Council? Because you guys are intended to grind out the interesting topics about commerce and the harbor so that the product that they receive, they can make an informed decision. One of the things I really enjoyed about Tony Bacon when he was the vice mayor was he said the value of our boards is they help educate us so that we can make better decisions. And so I would just encourage you guys that really, to me, when I think about PACAB and when the city manager thinks about PACAB, is that's the way that you guys can best use the talents that are on the dais right now, is talking about the port and commerce as it applies to the port, and not trying to spread yourself so thin, because there's a ton of really cool goals, objectives, priorities, but it becomes an issue of, if we try and tackle all of it, we're going to tackle none of it.
Thanks for that, and I'll just say that along those lines, I believe, like you were saying, that the community members feeling like they can come to this board for a variety of things. So I'm not saying that an entity like this board does not need to exist. Like I said, maybe it's one for housing, maybe it's one for energy, but I also think that the stuff affecting the port and commerce are so big and varied that needs to be looked at too. So that's what I'm getting at, is a discussion about whether we need more boards or to, like I said, to maybe change what this is called, because we're called Port and Commerce, but that's not what we do. So if we're not Port and Commerce, do we call ourselves something different? But more importantly, I think there needs to be a Port and Commerce specific board, and maybe possibly a sustainable energy board. Like you said, it's a living, breathing thing, and it needs to reflect what the needs of the city and the city council are.
This is the only board that has seats that are open to people outside of the city limits, for one thing. And it's really the only board that the city has currently that can entertain any other topic outside of planning and zoning and historic preservation. So unless a new board is established by the council, I would be reluctant to hogtie us into not being able to handle people that come and speak to us about various concerns. There could be something going on in the community that nobody's really aware of. And they might choose to come here. It might be better because it's during the day and they don't like to come at night, or, whatever. But it does give that opening to citizens to have a voice. And I would just be reluctant to lose that. I don't feel like currently anything that we're doing is outside of our scope in terms of what's been defined.
Correct.
And it is a lot of different things, but my reluctance in encouraging the city to form another board would be, look at how hard we had to work and long we had to wait to fill this board. I mean, seats sat open on this board for a long time. There were days where we couldn't even meet because we didn't have filled seats. So getting another board and then trying to fill another board seems, I don't know. It makes me very reluctant.
Thank you for your take on PACAB. That's, I think that helps direct us in line of discussion. I would kind of second, I think we've gotten a little off track in the past on issues that the city and even the state don't have control over. I mean, it's interesting to bring them to discussion, but they're not actionable items other than maybe making sending a letter or something. And it's very broad. In regards to energy, because the city does run the utility, and there has been proposals in the past that would have impacted our commercial users significantly, that this board was able to act upon directly and provide advice, I think that's an important part as long as the city continues to maintain that business. But my overall recommendation here, just seeing how my term's almost up here in, I think, in July, and have some experience now with how this board tends to work, and it is a great place for discussion, but I would recommend trying to keep things maybe 1 degree of separation from what directly impacts our commercial and port users. So, housing, for example, I would say directly impacts our ability to hire employees. However, when we get into zoning issues and stuff, I think that's another degree past that. So if we could maybe come up with some more limited scope of discussion on those things. Childcare is another great example where, yes, that's impacting our ability to attract talent to Seward, but we don't need to manage childcare. I think, we need to kind of set our boundaries and stay focused on that. I think we could get maybe some more work done. Thank you, Bill.
Well, I think this is an interesting topic. But right off the top, I don't agree with the concept that the board is overtasked because you list a whole bunch of things and priorities and mission statements. You can take them up as the need arises in order. If you don't have time for them, you can't do anything about it. You obviously take the priorities. We all make decisions on priorities, and we'll focus on those. So I can't think of anything that has not been able to be considered because of that. And Board Member Paquette is correct, and we missed one meeting because we didn't have a quorum. But it was difficult to fill the board, and I'm sorry, and I would like to better understand is why what you were able to see in literature didn't match actually what was going on here, because I've been on the board long. I guess I'm the longest serving member. Carl's been on a long time too, then Linda. But I've seen the board be asked to take up a variety of topics, and when Mayor Terry was the board member and others, Darrell Schaefermeyer and many others, as a matter of fact, they had a lot of experience with the harbor, with the commerce of the and this is the coastal community of the coastal community commerce, but it was always understood that commerce meant something bigger, or we wouldn't have had the Chamber of Commerce present to us every meeting, or generally every meeting. And I took comfort, frankly, personally, as someone who is a novice boatsman, or not at all, that others did understand that, could present an argument that I could participate in, but then I could bring in a statewide knowledge of commerce and how it affects the city of Seward, the rail belt, and all of us. So I saw, quite frankly, the mission to improve our lives, but through commerce, is important. Education is getting a little bit off, but it's still in that, how does it encourage our commerce? How does it improve our community? So I think there's an important difference in this group than planning and zoning or historic commission. They're commissions. They can actually present something for action. We cannot. We're board members. We're not commissioners. So we're an advisory group to council and to the administration. And a case in point, the assistant manager brought to us a topic a couple months ago now to help with that we were well positioned to do, and that was the problem with housing or job retention or whatever it is. And we're able to fit that into our schedule. Do we have a lot to do? There's a lot to be done. I guess I enjoy the challenge, and I'm always on my tiptoes, wondering if I'm over my head. But I think this board has risen to the challenge, and before Steve was here, before Jeanette was here, there were others in those positions that actively sought the opinion of this board, and makes that board very, very beneficial to the city. Now, again, I think the presentation of what we do and the focus on the harbor, we spend a lot of time with the harbor master. Rightly so, because, I mean, look at how much of our commerce revolves around the harbor. And those of you who are in that, well, there's at least 2 or 3 of you that are tied directly to that. You know, it's important to talk about it, but it's not in any way less important to talk about the other things that affect our lives. Commerce to me is just not, and here's where we probably disagree, it is not just fish policy, pardon me, but it's a larger policy. It's building stuff. You know, I'm a builder. It's building stuff. It's creating infrastructure. The heat loop, or, you know, that's a project, doesn't have anything to do with the harbor. You know, but it's certainly something that we can talk about. And I don't mean to bring that topic up just in this meeting necessarily, but no, I agree with the chair. We do have a lot on our table, but I do think that we can prioritize it so we're not overburdened. And it should be clear that the things that council wants us to concentrate on. That's why we give them a list, and they can redline it, they can mark it up, they can say, no, we don't want you to do this. And certainly as a board member at that next meeting, or as a citizen, you can give council your advice, and they will then direct us what to do. Whether the name needs to be changed, I won't argue that. I mean, a name's a name. I mean, and maybe it should be something else, I don't know. But it seems broad enough, and most people know PACAB, it's easy to say, is available. So that's my 25 cents worth.
Thank you. Does anybody else have?
I kind of agree with everybody. What's being said, I think that, I don't know how long I've been on this board now, but since I've been here, we do take on a lot of things. I think if you choose to volunteer your time to try and help the city, you're someone who likes to say yes as opposed to no, and I think that maybe can be some of the issue with the board, is that we try and take on too much, and because I do agree with you, I feel like we are overburdened. There's 16 short-term goals, I don't know how many long-term, you know. There's a lot of goals on here, and I think that you know, we set up a calendar every year, and most of the time we have to scratch things out because one of the topics that we're talking about rolls over 2 or 3 weeks, and I think that maybe trying to figure out how to better manage that as a group would be good, because, you know, we have 15 balls in the air right now that we're trying to deal with, and instead of finding 3 that are very important right now, I mean, like housing has become a huge issue, and we're talking about that at every meeting. Clearly that's something that needs to be dealt with, but, you know, then you throw in the energy, and you throw in a washdown pad, and you throw, you know, like there's all these things that need to be talked about. But if you talk about all of them, you're never going to make a decision about one thing. And so I think, you know, it's nice to have the short-term goals, the priorities, but I think that if we could streamline it and fine-tune it, I think that it would help a lot, because, you know, I feel like every time I get the email that says that the PACAB packet is ready for pickup, I look at it and I just think, wow, that's a lot of information that I need to absorb by Wednesday, and then the next week it's something completely different. Instead of sticking to that topic, we kind of jump around, and I think that that's a challenge. So that's my 2 cents. I definitely joined this board because I live outside of city limits. I can get on this board. I wanted to be part of the city, but also I read the mission statement that talked about port and commerce, and that is what I do. So that's what I thought it was. I've learned over the last 6 or 8 years that I've been on here that it's a lot more than that.
Anybody else have?
It might be appropriate, I'm not quite sure, we're going to present to council on the 29th, but it might be appropriate to reconsider our priority list. If there's a consensus that we're overburdened and we need to focus on a few things. I think there was an attempt, and I'm not quite sure whether you were seated or not. I think not. I think I was the interim chair. And we talked about this, and I think it was a laundry list of things. And I think we did try to include them, maybe with the expectation we weren't going to get them all.
So one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up at this work session is because we do have this planning session coming with city council, and I wanted us to have time as a board in an informal setting, sort of, to discuss how we thought about, what we thought about our roles, and to maybe talk about exactly what you were just talking about, this list of short-term goals and long-term goals, and maybe read through them as individuals and think about what's really important. And when we go to city council, ask them to help us. We do have our priorities, but also when you look at some of these, the definition of a goal is something, it's an actionable item with a measurable outcome. And so some of these are submit a climate action plan to council. That's a very concrete thing. But also we're, in March, and, we haven't really talked about that. So just taking a moment, a breath, to evaluate who we are in the community, who we are as a board, what direction we've been given by the council, and how to be the most beneficial to them. And asking council to, I guess, in a way affirm that we are being the most beneficial entity we can be to them. Because all these things we're covering, while they're fascinating and interesting and need to be covered, if we're not delivering valuable information and insight to the city council with all of the things we're covering, maybe we aren't being the best entity we can be. And so I just think it's a good thing to take a brief moment and reevaluate that before we meet with city council in 2 weeks. Please.
Can we change this list
Right.
now? Do we
Not
have
today.
time?
We can't.
We
Point of
can't
order.
change it.
I believe that you're talking about a resolution that the group has already presented to council. So I'd have to ask the clerk whether we're able to deal with that now or not.
We can't deal with it now.
We can't
No.
vote on anything today.
No, my request is just that we, as individuals, in preparation for our meeting with the city council, go over these again and look at and think about it.
Can we do it right now?
Yeah.
Like, I would like to, let me just say, I want to take submit a climate action plan off this list.
We can't take it off.
No, I know,
We can talk about
that's
taking
what
it
I'm,
off. Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
absolutely.
I want to talk about it now so that on the 29th, we talk about it.
Sure.
Because,
Sorry to interrupt, I have to leave,
Okay.
and I'm sorry, but I have people demanding snow removal.
And rightly so.
all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
Can I steal one of these candy bars? I'm
Yes,
going to eat
that's
it
what,
today.
Dean put them up there for us.
Keep your energy up for all that snow.
We did a lot of work on this. We had a community meeting, and there was a lot of input that we got from the community. And then COVID hit, and I feel like all the wheels have fallen off of this item. I wouldn't even know how to start to bring it back. And I feel like the thing to do would be to ask the city that if the city wants to move forward with a climate action plan, which requires a lot of work, that the city establish a committee of their own, solicit and have people, or partner with Sustainable Seward, or explore some other options. But I do feel like that's one item that we're beyond our scope on it in terms of expertise and knowledge and all of that. It was, I don't think we were out of line in the beginning when up to the point where we held the community meeting, but I think taking that information from what happened at the community meeting and then moving forward, that's really outside of our purview, is my feeling. I don't know how everybody else on the board feels.
I would agree with that, and I think the same thing with the energy workshop, right? It was, if I recall, we were somehow going to do the energy workshop as a board, and we had it changed into, promote energy education, and I think the board work needs to happen here, and some of these things are just, we can do the ad hoc committees on occasion, but that, the climate action plan, the energy workshops, those are all things that require a significant outlay of time and effort, and require more than what just the members here can do. So I kind of like where we're going with track and evaluate of stance instead of do it.
Sure.
I think that's a more appropriate use, and then we can still have the testimony. We can still bring all the information to the dais here and make with it what we will, but not try to task the board with actually executing. And again, I don't think that's even in our. We don't have powers and duties to build things. So we're advisory. So thank you.
Come on, Bruce, I knew you had something to say.
I just read through these, and I'm not a good reader, and I certainly concur with Board Member Lawrence. I'm not a good reader. I didn't like school, but unfortunately I read a lot. I think we dealt with two of these things today in the priority thing. We dealt with two of these things today. We're going to deal with it again. That's not a burden. There's a couple others here. Yeah, maybe the climate action thing was really a place where we were going a little while ago, and I was on the climate board, and we had a few meetings at the church, and but it didn't develop a whole lot. I think there was an energy fair, but I can see where that is a distraction. As Board Member Smith says, that's a big burden, and it takes us actually out of this arena, out of our meeting, cooperative kind of conspiracy. But I don't see a lot of these other things so far off the track. I mean, we talk about the SMIC development plan, we talk about the boat harbor, what used to be called the small boat harbor development plan, we talk about fish landings, we talk about the charter boats. I don't see that a lot of this has taken, a lot of our time has been taken away from our core, those core issues. It may be that our calendar got clouded, and if so, I will take the credit or the blame. It was during my tenancy that calendar was established, and it's not something I'm real good at in that regard. But if we could relook at that and solve some of the problems, and I agree, discussing this today, then going to council individually as a group, and they'll ask us generally each for comments, and the chair will lead, the vice chair would contribute, anybody else would, but if we're all on the same page about we're core mission and some of the things that are peripheral that we really don't think we can do. It sounds to me like we're talking about climate action. However, you got to remember that we wouldn't have bidirectional meters without the action of this board. So I take that back. I think it happened finally with the help of this board. You never know. So I don't think we should divorce ourselves from the idea that citizens can bring things to us in those energy matters. And maybe that, and I'm confused by priorities versus goals. I admit that maybe some of these are miscategorized. And that they're listed as things that we could do. Here's some of the things, and you've gone to the regulations, which are broad. I agree with Steve, that they're broad, and I think intentionally broad. But still, again, as I said before, it doesn't mean that you have to deal with everything.
Right.
You're a gas station, but you're only going to change the tires. You're not going to change the engine.
And I think the key part of that is this kind of discussion, is touching base and saying, hey, are we doing the things that we want to do? Are we being valuable? Is our time being spent in the best way it can?
Well, that's a manager, so assistant manager. Have you gotten anything from us that's of value?
I would say yes.
Thank you.
The best thing that I've seen, the best thing I've seen PACAB do was, when we talked about vessel storage fees, you guys came up with a really, really innovative solution that got us up to the 50th percentile and simultaneously helps incentivize folks from not being derelict and using SMIC effectively. So I do have to say, I think the best work product that PACAB produces directly goes back to Harvard though. And maybe it goes back to the interests of the members too, back to Board Member Lawrence's comment, that I think PACAB is best positioned to deliver product to council as it regards to Port and the Harbor. We're growing. We're going to continue to grow. I would just encourage you guys not to go so broad that you spread yourself so thin that you can't actually delve deep into some of the complex issues that you guys have to deal with. It kind of becomes a quality-quantity issue. Don't take on so much that you can't produce quality product for the things that are really, really important. And I don't know where that balance is for you guys. But that's just my perspective.
I really appreciate that. I think you're absolutely right. I realize that getting too broad you lose it all. Being too narrow is a problem too, so what's the right mix? One of the comments that set this discussion off was we didn't have a citizen comment. We didn't have time to deal with a issue with the wash-down pads and creosote logs. Quite frankly, when that was presented, that was the first time I heard there was an objection. So that we haven't dealt with it, I don't think that's really true. You know, there may be another time where we deal with it. It may be fait accompli by the time we get to it. But that wasn't because we're overloaded with other things. We did have one meeting where we didn't have a lot of time to go into it, but I think it had to do with maybe the presentation from, we had two presentations.
We had an extra one that day. I've sent an email to the clerk to ask that both the washdown pad and the creosote floats be put on the next meeting agenda. So I don't know if that email actually got opened yet.
I saw it.
Did you? So I don't.
I can't let that go without making a comment. So the administration for this board is sitting in front of you.
Right.
So sending it to the clerk, that's not who sets your agenda, which I think she was doing a great job when we had some change in the guard. But like, you work closely with your administration on what the agendas look like.
Right.
So that would be my recommendation.
So who should I have sent it to? Norm?
I would CC your chair and send it to Norm and Stephen.
To put it on, to get it on the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay,
I would
understand.
always keep your chair in the loop and then
Right.
work with administration, because that's who's going to be your support with backup documentation or answering questions. The clerk could, and nothing against the clerk, but that's just not her role in this situation.
She
Okay,
types it up, we tell her what we want
Yeah.
on it.
okay.
So sorry to chime in there,
No,
but I
no,
just
no.
didn't let it pass.
No, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did.
And it's
'cause
not adversarial at all, I'm just like.
I've been on this board for a few years, and
I think
I've
there was
never been told that.
And I think there was a time and place where the clerk was trying to step in and fill some holes that were there.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Thanks for that point of order.
Sorry.
Appreciate it. No, I think it's good, we have a lot of new people.
So it's jumped, it's jumped from administration back to the clerk, now it's coming back to administration.
Yeah.
Because administration used to do this, and then the clerk took it over, and
Okay, okay, so I will send you the email,
send it to
send it to Stephen, asking those items to
And
be put
CC
on the
me, yeah.
agenda for him. And I'll CC you, and I'll CC you. Got it.
Okay, so, all board members, if there's something you want to see on the agenda, chair and administration.
And
Good to have that
if you guys have
clarified.
a question about something, call me. This is something we can take care of without taking up our time. We have, we already talked about how short on time we are. If something I can take care of over the phone, and explain something, call me. I'll respond to you anyway. So, yeah, nobody's reached out to me about these issues.
Okay, well, I think I think we've just been off the rail and sending stuff to Brenda, because that's how
Yeah, I'm
it was
talking about
going.
like the issue that
Yeah.
came up today, I understand
Yeah.
your concerns. But reach out to me, ask me the questions, that way you have a better understanding
Right,
of what's going on. That's all.
yeah.
That's helpful, thanks, Norm. I've been in to see Norm a couple of times, so
Yeah,
usually
yeah.
has a pretty
I
open
mean, I
door.
can talk about one of them now if you like, it's up to you.
I don't know.
I don't know if we're allowed to. Was it
Work
noticed?
session, well,
It has to, it still has to be on our
yeah,
agenda
okay, that's
even in a
fine.
work session.
I'll,
Sorry.
that's fine, just reach out to me, call me.
Great, so I think, that's really all I wanted to achieve by putting this in our work session, is just a chance as a board, before we're in a meeting with city council, to just gauge where everybody is on our current workload, what direction we're headed, going into that meeting. I think that'd be good to do every year before that meeting, just make sure everybody's on the same page and have the same ideas, and give everybody a chance to express how they feel about what we're doing and where we are.
Chair, well, if I might. I think this is probably going to fit into this discussion, because, and that is the resolution, whatever it's 2202-038, which is the resolution that I promoted to establish an ad hoc heat loop advisory board. And the way it was drafted, it would come back to PACAB, to the chair, to establish a board. Now, that is maybe a little convoluted as it's drafted, and maybe it should have just asked the council to do it. But that kind of burden would be an increase that I could see some pushback to. Look, we're already tasked with a whole bunch of things. Why are we adding this task? But I did respond to a comment the other day, and I'll respond again. It's on been postponed. You might know that the action was postponed at Monday night's meeting till the 29th. It'll come back on the 29th, and I'll speak to that. And one of the speakers was here, Tom, earlier, and others that I've talked to since. The intent is not to create a monster organization. And if that's what it's grown into, then we probably need to rethink it. It should not have been assumed to be an additional burden on this board, the one that couldn't been met. It was quite frankly an idea to gather more energy from other sources.
I think that ties into this conversation well, in that it might be in our interest to ask council to evaluate whether or not they want a board specifically to look at those things. That might be timely, something that comes out.
It's a resolution that'll come back to them.
One of the suggestions that council members made was that there's nothing stopping citizens from forming a committee and going after the...
Right.
And my personal take on it is that that's what should happen. I sort of watched what happened with the climate action subcommittee that we made, and this would be kind of the same thing, right? We would solicit people outside of PACAB to sit on this committee to look for funds.
We can't get too far down.
No, but my recommendation would be for, if citizens want to do that, to just get together and do it.
Yeah, so we can't talk too much about that.
Right.
But we can talk about it in how it affects this board as a workload.
Right.
And still be okay,
Right.
so.
And if I might, we're not going to talk about it too much, but that kind of group might be called something like Renewable Energy Seward. It might be called something like that.
Did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, I had a thought, and I'm not very good at hiding facial expressions when my mind thinks. So I have a question, and I'll preface my question with first saying that, again, city administration fully supports the heat loop project, regardless of what decision is made about the ad hoc committee. We have and will continue to...
We can't talk about the ad hoc committee.
Okay.
We can only talk about it as it affects our workload.
Right.
Because that's
So,
what we're talking about.
and I guess that,
And our priorities.
so there's my question, is it the board's opinion that ties back to port and commerce? And I think that's the question you have to decide. Because if this body's gonna be involved in it, back to Board Member Smith's point, it should have one degree of separation at most from your mission.
So my response to that as chair would be that you asked if it ties into port and commerce. As chair, I don't believe it ties into port and commerce. However, if you look at the current articles and how our mission is outlined, it does fall within our preview as it's defined. So it depends on where you're drawing that definition. Which is why I feel like we need to make sure we all understand what our priorities are as a board.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, because I think that's two degrees of separation, right? It's not directly tied to the port. It's definitely tied to some level of commerce, but it's really even more tied to like the Chamber of Commerce, because it's something that the city ends up getting to promote to the world about, here's this, you can come here and see how it works and look at what we've done. And that's definitely outside of our purview, right? That's way outside the port.
Well, that's an opinion, of course. Just like it's an opinion that water, wastewater, and infrastructure is within our purview.
Which, the way we're currently
Right.
worded,
It
it
is.
is. And so, yes. Well, I think it's been a really great discussion. I've really appreciated everybody's input.
Let me jump ship real quick.
Any more sacred cows here?
We kind of touched on the boat ramp fees, but we never came up with nothing. I know what you suggested. And so I was looking at some of the other ones, the other harbors.
Oh, are we going back to the tariffs?
Yeah, we didn't touch on that price, so.
Okay, can you point us?
Sure, so,
Where we want to be looking?
page 2, and I have down there what Homer gets and what Cordova, and I also
Okay.
did Valdez. So
We touched
Valdez.
on this briefly with the senior question, but we
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
touched on the fees.
Yeah, we
themselves.
kind of, yeah. So Valdez is $20 round trip, okay? And then, but they also have a commercial fishing rate, and then a commercial use rate. We only have really one commercial user here, but the annual launch ramp for in Valdez is $160, where ours is $100. And in Cordova, they actually, so if you have a stall, you gotta launch your boat to go in your stall, you shouldn't, and they have that, no charge. So I think something like that.
Slip holders, you mean?
Slip holders, correct.
Okay,
You know.
Don't have a charge to launch.
Yeah,
that seems reasonable.
sure. But I'm
But they were
thinking-
giving something away, that's not raising any
Correct.
revenue.
Well,
I mean, I think I've been asking, well, I pay, $2,000 a year, I should be able to launch for free,
We've heard
Right.
that,
And the city-
we've
the
heard
city
that,
can-
public testimony.
Sure.
the city can rent your slip that you pay for when you're not in it, so it's not, we double dip on.
It's not double dipping. I got a great story to tell you now.
Sorry.
You call it double dipping, but it's not.
Okay, we can charge twice for the same slip, so I don't think that we're necessarily giving something away if we
Right,
allow a slip
right.
user to launch. And I think that's a
Okay.
a good.
So you're asking if to come up with a number?
I would stick with, because Homer's so close, I would stay with Homer's rates at $13. To me, it seems fair, it's not a big jump, but like I said, nothing takes effect till 2023.
Let's do $12.
We could do $12. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, I'm thinking, because we have to change all the kiosks, like I said, that can be done programmed in the wintertime. But $12 is more than 10, so.
And it's a dollar less than Homer, just,
And then
Do you know what Whittier is?
yeah. Whittier is,
Whittier is much more competitive for us than.
yeah, Whittier, where's Whittier's at? Whittier's is, so they have a 2-week permit is $30. The stall holders is no charge. Non-stall holders is $100 a year. So,
They don't have a daily?
nope.
And are you suggesting we also go up to Homer's 200 per season, or are you suggesting we stay closer to the 100 per year?
I would go at 150, my suggestion
Okay.
is fair.
Could we
I like
tie it
it.
to the 10 launch thing, so if it's $12, 120, or just so there's some sort
I see what you're
of
saying,
Makes
yeah.
sense, yeah.
step?
Yeah, sure. Okay, give me something to work with, thank you.
And then, yeah, if you can see whether there's a way we can offer Seward seniors.
We'll have to look at that. Seward seniors.
Right.
Not Seward locals?
Closer to seniors.
Not all, right.
Age
just
limit, 65.
Yeah.
I mean,
Could you
the
do a
regular
voucher?
65.
Or,
if they come in and apply for it, you mean?
yeah,
Well, kind of like what they do, if we're getting, but the borough, you get a senior rate for your house, for taxes. And we could look at something like that.
Right, with the borough, you don't pay any taxes if you're,
Over 200,000 you do.
Right. Or
If your house is over
200,000.
200,000, then
Yeah.
you pay something.
Great.
I have one last question that doesn't have anything to do with the tariff or
Okay.
tax, but more our priorities and goals. We give that list to council and they approve it. Have we ever, I don't remember ever seeing anything specifically come back from council saying, we would like you to focus on this, or we don't, it seems like it's like, we think this is our priority list, we give it to them, and it's just check a box, yep, go ahead and do it. Is that correct? Have we ever, does anyone?
I've seen council give direction to what, say we should have PACAB work on this. They've done that.
And if I might, I think often board members get some feedback from council members or the mayor or administration in the background, and then bring it to the discussion when we establish priorities. But it's not just drawn out of thin air.
I guess I'd love to see more interaction, because I feel like it's just, we decide that this is our priorities, they say, yep, go for it, and then I haven't ever had a council member, ever, yeah, I don't know.
Well, let's see if we can get you one.
And that's another one of the reasons why I brought this up, is because I've been here 3 months now, 4 months, and the same thing. I would just like, I suppose, a little more interaction from city council, even if it's just, hey, I mean, I know they approve it, but just making sure that we're giving them what they want, what they expect. All of our time is really valuable, and I don't want to come do something that somebody doesn't see value in, that I'm not providing something for the time that I'm volunteering.
Agreed.
So it would be nice to get a little bit more feedback from council.
So you do have that meeting coming at the end of the month, and then you have that prior to going into with the council regular work session. So that's something maybe you can bring up to them for, maybe give us additional direction, or if you want us to focus on something more, that's something you can bring up, just a suggestion.
Yeah, I would like to. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it now, before I didn't want to have this discussion in front of them.
Right,
At the next
no,
meeting.
I'm glad you did.
To be fair, I think I have heard council, and we have the mayor here, and we had a council member here, and you mentioned Tony McLean, the former council member. We've had those people bring up, well, PACAB talked about this at their last meeting. So it's not like it's not just all written stuff.
Right.
And there's actually a human touch.
That's
And I really appreciate the administration being here, because I think that's valuable. I mean, I've mentioned that before, that we've had a strong relation with the administration in the past, and I think to the benefit of the administration. And certainly, I think I like to participate where I'm wanted as well. And if I'm not wanted, tell me, I got plenty else to do.
Great. Okay, any last comments on either of those two things, tariffs or our mission, before we adjourn for today? So So our next one will be an evening meeting. That's a
Yeah.
6 PM or something on the 29th.
5:30, isn't it?
Somewhere in the evening.
29th,
5 o'clock, we're up at 5:30.
yeah. So this, I will not be here for that, but Nancy will be here, but it's about you guys. So talking with council, but we'll have somebody from the harbor here, so.
Great, thank you, we appreciate that. She was really helpful in your absence as well.
Yeah, she was.
You have good staff there. Okay, we will adjourn at 1:40.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Department chairs at 2 and 5 o'clock.
That's a McMullen building, that's over the roof of the Chattermark.
All done, garden family. It looks so nice. Even I took Steven down.
Oh, Chris,
I have to leave.